So why use the adaptation design tool? Well, what does it do? What it does is, in the first activity, it helps you apply climate smart design to your management activities. So it walks you through a process to take a specific action or a specific project and think about all the aspects that would need to be adjusted to render it as robust as possible, given the effects of climate change, both on the threat that you're managing and on just the way you can even implement your activity. The second activity it does is it supports brainstorming of additional adaptation activities that may be critically needed. What I mean by that is you may already have a management plan, but in light of examining the most recent scientific information on vulnerability and resilience, you might recognize that there are some aspects and some threats that you currently are not addressing in your plan. And so we have a compendium of information from the literature that can be used to brainstorm specific actions that you might want to add to your plan. And I would point out that if you happen to be someone who doesn't currently have a plan, who doesn't already have management actions, you can just start with this activity to start building your list of actions, the brainstorming step. You then, once you have actions, you then run them through that climate smart design process. So you can start at any point in the tool. And as I mentioned, along the way, the process generates insights, especially on information gaps and research needs. It may reveal where there's important information about vulnerability that needs to be looked for, or perhaps might need new research. So information gaps about the biology, about the climate effects, about the vulnerabilities. And you also get insights on what starts to come up is when you think in more detail about your actions, you begin to think how your action might interact with other actions in your plan. In other words, what are some of the synergies or trade-offs or conflicts that you might have between the action you're thinking about and another action? Are there any sequencing considerations where you would really need two actions to go together in order to get the outcome that you want, and they might need to be sequenced or they might need to be done together? What does the tool not do? Well, it doesn't do a vulnerability assessment for you. One of the important information resources that you do need to have in order to use the tool is vulnerability and resilience assessment information. That's step 2 of the cycle. And while generating a vulnerability assessment is outside the scope of this tool, we do provide some information in the guide about where you can go to figure out how to do basic summary vulnerability assessment and where you can get some resources. So it doesn't generate the vulnerability assessment, but you'll find when you're using the tool that it does tell you what form and content of information on vulnerability you need to use the tool. And that can send you back to step 2 in a way to go get that information. It also doesn't make your evaluation and selection decisions. This tool does not make your decision for you, but it does support a more robust decision process by giving you a large list of options that are described in a climate smart way that can help you understand the potential each action might have to be effective or not be effective, given the effects of climate change, and the potential for them to interact with each other. And we hope that this will allow this evaluation and selection step to be better informed. And it doesn't produce your implementation plan, but it certainly does, especially if you go into do a deeper cut, as we call it, of using the tool on the actions that you've selected. It does generate the technical basis for your implementation plan. There's some other value added in using the tool. These things have been emerging as we have tested the tool and worked with collaborators who are now using the tool. It structures and clarifies this complex thought process, which I've mentioned. And in so doing, it provides transparency and a record of the thought process that a group of people have systematically gone through. And therefore, folks feel that it can add credibility for the decisions that they make, or it can provide justification to higher level decision makers, where they present a very well thought out and transparent record of why they are pushing for a certain decision. It helps you proceed through this thought process, looking at and acknowledging uncertainty without being paralyzed by it. It encourages you to just move through the process And the uncertainty is one of the problems that might be noted. It can be taken into account, and it's always possible to go back through and improve information as more information becomes available. It also supports consideration of spatial and temporal scales in planning, and it provides a practical basis for higher level strategic planning. So what we've been finding with some other partners is that as they run a whole series of actions through the tool, the information that's emerging about the potential for actions to remain effective given climate change effects, in other words, their ability to be made climate smart, that begins to shed light on whether that needs to have an effect on higher level strategic climate smart planning.